New England Telephone. We're the one for you, New England. New England Telephone.
Kids weren't learning how to be part of their communities. They were not learning how to be integrated. They were not learning how to become citizens in their communities. Instead, they were learning how to be separate, how to be segregated, how to be weird in some cases, and how to hang out with a bunch of people that are also disabled.
Including all of our children in classrooms. Our cover story on this week's New Hampshire Journal.
Welcome to New Hampshire Journal. I'm Sam Fleming, standing in for Barbara Coles. Later in the program, we'll have our cover story on education, but first let's take a look at what was happening in the news this week. In 1975, Congress passed a landmark piece of legislation that ensured that all children, regardless of ability or disability, they would get a free public education. 15 years later, because of this act and the strong advocacy of parents, there's a growing movement to educate all children in their local schools, in their hometowns. Equal access for all, the movement for inclusive education.
What is so unusual about this image? In many ways, absolutely nothing. But for Jamie Dubuque, this is a major step toward what many children take for granted, the chance to make friends and the opportunity to learn in a regular classroom with a regular teacher and children her own age who have no disabilities. Jamie lives in Lebanon and attends the Mount Lebanon School. She has cerebral palsy and a seizure disorder. She can't walk, she can't talk, and has very poor motor coordination skills. Jamie's preschool experience found her in an isolated classroom with other children who also have severe disabilities. But things are different now, thanks in many ways to an emerging new way of thinking about the education of children with severe disabilities, what's known as inclusion.
Kids weren't learning how to be part of their communities. They were not learning how to be integrated. They were not learning how to become citizens in their communities. Instead, they were learning how to be separate, how to be segregated, how to be weird in some cases, and how to hang out with a bunch of people that are also disabled.
To many parents and educators, this just wasn't good enough, and so the idea of inclusion began to take hold. Simply stated, inclusive education means that all children go to the public school they would normally attend and are assigned to the classroom they would ordinarily be in if they had no disability.
All children have value and self-worth and are important, so that's a part of what we believe as a school district.
While the idea behind inclusion is simple, the road to implementation has not been. Jerry Williams, principal of the Mount Lebanon School, remembers.
We worked together as a year to do that, and my feeling even then was that we probably needed to talk about it a lot longer. At the end of that year, though, people said, well, let's do it. And so we jumped in, and we jumped into fully including all the children who live within our boundaries.
The whole thing leading up to her coming, before I got to see her that time and see her in the classroom, was really frightening. It was, I mean, I really felt like I wasn't prepared to deal with her. She didn't talk. I didn't know how to communicate with her. I wasn't sure that she could, you know, that I was going to know anything that she wanted. And so it was real difficult, and really, why is she going to be in my classroom?
By first grade, attitudes began to change.
I was really excited about her coming because I also knew her support was coming with her. So I knew what I could give to her was what life was really supposed to be like.
Jamie's in second grade now, and things are beginning to return to normal.
One of the nicest things that happened was that some of the children who were in her classes in previous years were assigned to travel, in a sense, with Jamie to my room. The children are so good with her that is just a wonderful support. And perhaps it's mainly an emotional support for Jamie. When she showed up in second grade, there weren't so many changes anymore.
The burden of this approach does not rest solely on the teacher's shoulders. The success of inclusive education depends on teamwork, between the teacher, teacher's assistant, and support services, in this case, the physical therapist. Together, they creatively adapt lesson plans to fit the individual needs of students.
It's not just a kid that's coming into a classroom. It's a child that has a support system that will ultimately enhance the entire classroom. And at the same time, making sure that they're participating as much as possible in the activities that the other kids are. But it may be very different goals and objectives.
The benefits of this educational approach may very well be difficult to measure, but to the teachers who see these children every day, the education goes beyond academics.
Perhaps the most important thing is that children love her and have learned that when you look at someone who has a disability that shows, you're not frightened of it, you look past it.
Jamie has depended so much on adults, and all of a sudden now it is her peers that are an important part of her life.
Well, she came to my birthday party at a gymnastics thing, and she didn't want to go on the trampoline, but she did go upstairs with me, and she ate some cake and ice cream. It's fun.
We're teaching kids values, and we're teaching them how to interact with people who are different than them. And we're teaching them about a society of acceptance. And I think in states like New Hampshire, which really have very little ethnic diversity, I think it's even more important.
Although Jamie can't talk, her teachers say that doesn't mean she can't communicate. Through a combination of her eyes, head, and facial movements, Jamie lets the world know what she wants. This device is a part of her communication lifeline. It's actually nothing more than a simple on-off switch that activates a cassette player when she pushes against the pad that rests near her head.
Jamie in the prom stand. On October 30th, Mom rode the bus with me to school. Mom came to visit my classroom.
Today, with the help of a friend reading it, Jamie presents a book report to the class.
Thank you. What a big job. That was real teamwork. We're constantly in a process of looking and saying, if it isn't working for her, it isn't that she's not trying. I think it must mean we need to adapt it still in a different way.
This search process leads some educators to wonder if something isn't missing. Pat McNamara used to be the special education teacher for these kids.
I think sometimes they're missing the quantity of what I could teach them. But the teachers are teaching them with quality, which I wasn't able to give them. Jamie's time on the computer working on her communication system used to be in almost hour blocks of time. We don't have the ability to do that with her now simply because we don't have the person who's trained that can be with her for that period of time. If she were in a self-contained classroom, she could be learning her communication system for hour blocks of time. However, she wouldn't have anybody to communicate with.
85% of the kids who are labeled as having special education needs in this state cost about the same as any other student. And the students that have more significant disabilities cost more. But they're going to cost more. And they're going to cost even more if we as a society keep them in places where they don't learn and aren't included.
Proponents of inclusive education do not proclaim this to be a money-saving philosophy. They do say, however, that it doesn't cost any more, and in the long term may be the best investment we could make, because these children will grow up to be our neighbors. They will want to live and work beside us as independently as they're able, or as we will allow.
The more people are included and the more they learn to socialize and the more they receive their supports within natural community settings, that ultimately is a cheaper way to provide services and supports than highly specialized technical therapeutic environments.
Over the past few years, teachers and special educators have begun to develop the most effective ways to propel these kids into the mainstream of life. And because of this, children like Jamie are being given the chance to learn how to communicate with the world in which they live.
That report was produced by Mitch Schulman, who's been at Channel 11 the last few months on a sabbatical leave from the University of Lowell in Massachusetts. We want to thank Mitch for all his hard work. And before we say goodbye, I'd like to ask you for your letters. Send us letters here at New Hampshire Journal and tell us what you think of our stories and if you have any story ideas or suggestions. Please write us at New Hampshire Journal, Box 1100, Durham, New Hampshire, 03824. Barbara Coles will be back in this seat a week from now. Until then, I'm Sam Fleming. Thanks for watching and have a good evening.